Hey everyone, my name is Dallas and I'm here with Travis Misaki, a real estate broker in the Oregon area. And we are going to be talking about what's different, what's changed in the real estate market in the summer of 2022. So I'm going to pass it first here to Travis to outline where the market was in like the 2020, 2021, and kind of what's happened then to get us to where we are now here in the summer of 2022 in a much different real estate market, to say the least. But Travis, did you want to outline it? Say hello to everyone.
Hello, yeah, I'll take it from there. Thanks for having me, Dallas. We'll talk about just briefly where we're at in the market now. It is very unique, and what we'll talk about is how you can benefit from it, whether you're a buyer or a seller, because these are very unique times. So just to kind of rewind the clock, past couple of years, there was a thing called COVID, which led to a recession, defined by Federal Reserve, and they reduced interest rates to an all-time low, leading to a spike in home buying demand, which is why you saw a lot of headlines saying homes are being offered at 100 grand over asking, which is crazy. But it was because people had more buying power with a lower interest rate. They had a lower mortgage payment. Now, as you might have seen in the headlines, in the past 5 months, Federal Reserve has hiked rates, meaning they increased the interest rates. And we actually went from a low of around 3.5 earlier this year up to 5.9-ish. We actually did hit 6.1%. That can increase the average person's mortgage payment by around $600. So since we're in a different market, we did see that instead of having multiple offers over asking, we're now seeing the opposite, where buyers have a little more power. And instead of over asking offers, we're saying under asking offers at times. The average sold price in the Portland area has relatively stayed the same in the past 5 months, but we have seen reductions because people are listing their homes at higher amounts. So also the headline is saying that there are many price cuts. That is because or sellers are getting a little too optimistic, pricing a bit too high, and when the market isn't catching up, they do have to reduce their price to keep in line with the market value. So how you can benefit is, if you're a buyer, since you have power, you can either request or send an offer under asking to the seller, or you could actually request for a seller concession, meaning you ask the seller to pay your closing costs or buy down your rate. So if I run an offer, I'll include maybe a $7,500 closing cost credit, which can be huge if you're 3% down payment range, or even if you're an investor using a 20% down payment. If you're a seller, is it a good time to sell? Yes, it is currently, because rates are increasing further, or they very likely will, in September when the Feds meet again. So if you are in a time frame where you can list before them, it might be beneficial. I don't have a crystal ball, but for long-term real estate values, they're always forecasted to increase on average 3% a year. You are seeing different things. Fannie Mae, Zelle, they all have their estimates, but in general, just assume 3% on average. Just stay conservative. You don't get greedy. So if you are planning to list, doing it sooner would list your home. Doing it sooner will be beneficial. But I would say if you are trying to just cash out of real estate and go all in on crypto, that might not be the best option. So I hope I answered your question.
No, you did a really good job. And you even started giving people some ideas of different routes to go now that the market's changed. You outlined, hey, before it was a matter of like, how can we situate our offer best aligned versus like 20 or 15 other offers, right? And now it's more of a, okay, the interest rates have rose, and the prices, though there's formal reductions, like public reductions happening, the actual closed prices are fairly flat and consistent with what they were months previous, and still, like in some cases, steadily growing even still. So all things considered, right? You can do different things now. Instead of better offer, let's ask for different concessions and try and get into the home in the first place. Whereas maybe now a lot of buyers have been disqualified, and now buyers that were well qualified are only semi-qualified, right on the fringe of qualification. And so a lot of these seller concessions and looking for it can get you back in qualification for these homes. If you're looking at it just outside in, oh, here's the price, we can assume all the closing costs, right? We just barely don't qualify. But if that house has been on there for 22 days, 25 days, and you call the agent and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of traction, instead of purely giving up there, a good agent or just anyone that's, looking to get a deal done will ask that second question. Hey, like, this is where we're at, just be fully transparent. What can we do to, get my clients over the edge? Maybe even, what it takes, a specific concession, request it, right? It'll just be that 7,500 from the seller that we need on closing costs, but we can make the asking price, or we could actually do 1,000 more than asking if we get 7.5 or 8.5 down on that closing day.
Exactly.
Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to mention in this time too was there's that option, and now there's, for the investors, the seller finance option, meaning if you own the home completely outright, all cash, no note on it, you actually have the ability in the real estate market as the seller to finance the home to the buyer. Now, obviously, you still want to go through escrow and all those other due diligences, and you'll probably want the buyer to have more of an investor mindset themselves instead of, just trying to get into your first home, because there are a couple more things to keep in mind when doing a seller finance, i.e. a balloon payment in 5 or 6 years. Not a big deal if you know what you're doing in real estate, because that long period of time gives you the ability to wait out the market and at least refi at something close to your percentage rate, or even if it's a little higher, just right before, to avoid at least the balloon payment, realize a lot of the actual equity that you paid down on the home through the seller carry, and then go from there. And since it's in your name already, lenders have a much easier time lending to you after 2 to 3 years of seller carry paying.
Exactly.
That's the only note I wanted to add there. But just in general, Travis, you're more on the day-to-day of the real estate. Any other just things you're seeing in the market that you would advise your potential buyer or seller of right now?
Yes, and I would say that I previously mentioned the under asking offer or the seller credit, that it works best when you do have a desperate seller, meaning the home has been around on the market for over 14 days. And sometimes sellers are even offering to give you a credit of around
within the RMLS.
Down the rate. And it's on the RMLS, meaning it's marketed only to brokers. So only someone like me, a buyer agent, would see if they wouldn't show this to the public typically. So that is very useful. Having $5,000 off in closing costs goes a long ways. I would say, however, that there's a pro and con with this, meaning that since we are in a higher interest rate environment, your monthly payment would be higher if you were a buyer, because you'd be taking around 5.5% interest rate, maybe, opposed to the previous 3% that we've seen. However, if you are able to have a seller concession and have your closing costs paid for, that could be a great opportunity. And in the future, if rates decrease, which they may, they typically do following recessions, but that's a whole other topic. But you do have the ability to refinance in the future if rates are lower. And when rates drop, home prices on average typically rise. No guarantees, but they typically do. And aside from that, I would say that would be all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally like it.
No, that's awesome.
I had a thought and I was like, what was that?
No, that was all super good. I had one thing that I'm gonna think this through and then I'll jump back in. We'll edit this portion out, but I did want to just, oh yes, I just wanted to, I'm gonna recap kind of a high level and then close it out, and then
Yeah.
that'll be so. No, couldn't agree more, Travis. And I just wanted to recap at a high level that basically, the market we saw before was try and get your best offer, best foot forward. Home prices are rising rapidly month over month. So sooner the better. You're gonna get a good monthly rate given the low interest rate that's going on as well. Now, prices are still that high, and you're not going to get the great monthly rate that someone would have gotten before, but you're going to get a much lower cost to get in than someone before, because there was no ability for seller concessions in the previous market. And now you're going to be able to get thousands of dollars of seller concessions because of all the buyer pullback, and the sellers on the market are trying to realize gains or have to, right? It's typically one or the other that we're seeing. You're realizing a gain right now and you're understanding to get a deal done, you concession, or you actually have to move. And to get a deal done, you'll concession. So higher monthly payment, but maybe to buy now, you're going to have to spend less than someone would have spent 5 or 6 months ago with a slightly lower payment. Yeah. Did I do a good job at recapping that, Travis?
Yep, that was perfect. And the only thing I want to add to is that while the headlines are saying that interest rates are at an all-time high, they have reached an all-time high of 6.1% last month. However, they have dropped to 5.2% or 5.25% for some people that are credit score 720 or above. So that does mean that we have seen a big pullback from the all-time high. And while that might not stay, or interest rates might not stay at 5.25% forever, we are not at the previous all-time high that was stated. So it could be a good opportunity to, dive into buying full while there's limited competition, because everyone else is still thinking that interest rates are at an all-time high, or all-time high as of the past 5 years, which they're not. As of this week.
Yep. Good call out there. And I think on that note, I'll wrap it up. You heard it here. If you can stomach an extra $500, $600 a month payment, then you might be able to get into a house a little bit cheaper now through seller concessions than you would have 5 or 6 months ago. And if you like real estate and startup investment content, like, share, follow, subscribe. Travis's information will be in the description of this video if you want to talk to him more about real estate investing or buying a dream home. He'd be happy to chat with you. And with that, have a good rest of your day. Peace.
Thanks for having me, Dallas.